hopefully you have all had a good break or had some good discussion in the continue the conversation space. We are into the last 45 minutes of the conference now, and thank you so much to those of you who have been with us all day. It's been great to have so much fantastic chat in the groups and your involvement. So we've heard a huge amount of inspiring stuff today, so many brilliant ideas from all of our speakers and from our local case studies. And for those of you who maybe haven't done anything like this before, what we hope this next session will do is give you some really practical steps and guidance on how to take an idea that you have right now into being a reality in your park. So I'm really pleased to say that we have Caroline Enyon, Parks Manager for the North at Bristol City Council, and Jeremy Diamond, who's Community Development and Volunteer Coordinator for Baines. So Caroline and Jeremy are going to talk you through all the bits you need to know to get a project off the ground. Over to you both.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to start our PowerPoint.
Thank you, Charlie, for the introduction.
Jeremy, go for it. I'll just start this. Okay, off you go, Jeremy.
Brilliant. Thank you, Caroline. I'm on a slight satellite delay with my internet connection, so if you get any overlap from myself and Caroline or Charlie, that might be part of the calls. But we're essentially going to talk through now the steps involved in working with councils and interacting with them around looking at your park and improving it for nature. Myself from the Bath and North East Somerset side and Caroline from the Bristol City Council side. And I think we're going to start. I think Charlie's going to kindly do a poll for us to get a feel for our audience, you guys out there. You know, are you members of groups? Are you individual volunteers? Are you new to all of this and interested in finding out, you know, what the first steps are, or are you working for a local organisation that links in with parks and nature and that sort of thing? So hopefully a poll will pop up in the chat box that you can respond to there. But we're essentially going to talk through the basic process of it, and we'll go through that kind of step by step. And Caroline are going to tag team it a little bit, and hopefully that will give some clarity there, and then a bit of time for questions at the end as well. So I'm going to hand over to Caroline to just start introducing the process.
Okay, so there's kind of three main stages that we've kind of put together that we decided that you need to kind of engage with the council with. And you know, we have heard from people today that have said it's quite difficult sometimes to engage with the council, which is understandable. So the three main steps are to understand what's needed to improve nature. So my slides are going to scroll through, so I'll come back to it. Second step is to talk to the council to refine and agree what's possible. And the third stage is just to do it. So actually, there's also a pre-stage, which Barry kind of Miles talked about in the hedge laying session. And that pre-stage is rather than approach the council as an individual with an individual project you want to deliver, try and come to us as part of a friends group, get together with some other people and start off as either you can start off as a non-constituted group or a more formal constituted group. And in that way, we've got an understanding that you're not just representing your own individual's views of what you want to do, you're representing a kind of group and how that works. Okay, do you want to talk about the second step?
Yeah, so yeah, once you're kind of part of a group and you know, you've got that interaction with other people using the park, so actually it's a broader dialogue, kind of engaging more people around it. It's then a case of understanding what nature's already in your park, what you've got there, and what you can do with that. And then it's moving on to liaising with the council about what might be done there, how that might happen.
Yeah, so one thing that we've heard a lot today is about looking for advice about how you enhance the nature in your park. So Alex Moores and Stuart Paynton gave us some examples of of how you could look at the biodiversity that you've got already and look at enhancing that, rather than putting new stuff in necessarily. So that was something that came through very strongly in the last talk about hedgerows, was actually it's better to look at the hedgerows that you've got, for example, and try and enhance those and make those better than to plant new hedgerows. It's always better to do that. And then Clary touched on this as well in the talk that she just did, which is about speaking to the council about ideas. And Clary's point was you want to try and get as many people who might be involved in that decision making as possible together all at once, so you're not having to bounce emails backwards and forwards, and that everybody's got a really good understanding of where you want to go. So, for example, she gave the example of planting some trees and some hedgerows. You want to get in the tree planting team, you want to get in the nature conservation officer, and somebody from my team, the operations team, will actually be looking after it on the ground. Jeremy, if you want to talk about
parties together, isn't it, that are interested and involved and have knowledgeable input to add to it. Yes. There's the delay. So shall I move on to talking to the council further there, or?
Yeah, about talking, sorry, this is then about refining your ideas. So after having met with the council initially, what you want to do is then go back and refine your ideas and put a plan together.
Yeah, and that very much needs to be a cooperative plan. You know, it needs to work. You know, and the councils are keen. We're very keen to work with the community and find the best ways of enhancing our parks. You know, for nature, but also obviously for all the people that use it and enjoy it. So we're always kind of trying to get that balance and work out how best to do that in an effective way. That's, you know, as Caroline said, building on what's already there. Appreciating how to kind of develop that and work with it before launching into other ideas about new aspects and that, which at times might be appropriate, but it's always best to kind of take stock and see how we step from where we are, and that's much more likely to work with the councils as well, to enable it to be a process that that we can keep up with as a council, because, you know, we're very busy just keeping up with the maintenance of spaces as it is. So anything too dramatic can actually just outpace us. You know, we cannot, you know, we can only move at the rate that we've got resource, which is unfortunately been diminishing and diminishing. But, you know, we can only move at that pace, but we're very keen to do that, and we're very keen to work with people. So that dialogue about refining the ideas and shaping the plans, the more we're engaged together in that, the more useful it can be, hopefully, for everybody. That's our intention. And that's generally most people's intention we work with, which is great. So then it's about, once you've done that, how do you move forward? You know, what might be ways of moving forward with that? Would you like to pick that up, Caroline, or shall I carry on?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was going to add to that the I think the council has been described or use the metaphor as the council's like a great big battleship that it's very hard to change its direction, but once it goes in a certain direction, then it's a force to be reckoned with. So just bear that in mind when you're kind of talking to us about changing the way we do things, definitely. So the next step could be, I guess it depends on what sort of project you've selected, but it might be that you need to seek some and do some fundraising and look for the resources that you need to carry it out. So it could be fundraising, it could be recruiting volunteers just to carry out some work on site. It might be about borrowing tools. So one interesting thing that came up today, I think that was from Richard Scott this morning, who was talking about the National Wildflower Centre that he's created, is that some of these interventions might be fundable through climate emergency or ecological emergency funding rather than the traditional route of parks funding. So it might be looking at different ways of funding things. There's also obviously the tool banks that we certainly have over in Bristol that people can borrow tools to carry out different pieces of tasks for. And then it's about advertising what you're doing to other local volunteers who might want to come along and join in your project. And Harry made the really good point of it. If you have really positive communication about your spaces and about what you're doing, people are more likely to have a really positive view of that site and to come in and get engaged and just make a difference on their site. And I guess finally then it's a bit about monitoring. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Jeremy?
Yeah, I could take that on. And I was going to also add on to what you're saying there about, loaning tools and that sort of thing. We do likewise for volunteer groups where needed at times. But it's also, if you're in that dialogue with the council about the changes and about what's happening, then actually it gives much more opportunity for us in the council to be able to say, oh, actually, we could help with that bit as well, and we could help with that bit. Because sometimes there's bits we can help with that you might not know of, that only come up once we're clear on what's happening as well. So yeah, that dialogue helps with all those bits as well. So monitoring the success is kind of, well, where are we, this sort of thing. And it's often, there's different ways and different details of how to monitor something. In an ideal world, it'd be lovely to have a really detailed, maybe, I forget the term now, but, like a species monitoring at the beginning. So, you go there and you see how many plants you've got, how many insects, birds or whatever, and then you do that again, after your project to improve that area in terms of nature, and that'd be great. And if you've got the knowledge and time and understanding and interest to do that, then it'd be great to baseline it before you make the changes. In whatever sense that is. That could be really detailed, or it might be just a kind of general capturing of, a snapshot of, one day here or whatever, we spotted a bit, we recognize these things. And then how can you look back and see the success of the changes? So it might be then going back and repeating a similar kind of bit of study, but it might also be actually, how did it go down with local people? It might be a bit of a survey of views around. It might be within your group, even if you're very active in the area that you've been working on and you're there regularly. It might be, oh, actually, we've spotted this that we never spotted before, and that sort of thing. So there's degrees of the kind of monitoring of how things work, to whether you kind of, you can go to that really detailed, really study it and do that. And that's, that's brilliant. That gets some really hard facts and figures that can really help. But you could also do a looser sense if that's too onerous for what you've got capacity as a group or interest as a group to do. Then you can do a lighter, more gentle thing of more anecdotal observation of changes and that sort of thing. And thinking about the fundraising and that, if you are raising funds, monitoring might be something you factor into that. And can you get an expert in, for a day at the beginning and a day at the end, to monitor that difference and see what's changed? So there's lots of different approaches there and ways of doing that, but it is really useful to have that sense of reflection, partly to help express to people what you're doing and the benefits it's having and how that's helping. But equally, it can sometimes be an extra thing that's hard to find time for. So depending on the scale of the project and what it's aiming at, choose your best method there. That's a tongue twister. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, Caroline.
Yeah, it was just something that kind of Roy talked about this morning. He talked about people's stories, and actually that's a very qualitative assessment of how things have gone and how things have changed, and capturing those is very important, and it might be more relatable for some people in terms of what they say. So yeah, I think that's a really good summary. And then I guess all of these things are about communication, and so one of the key things to do is make sure people are on board with the sort of things you're trying to do, and that you're communicating and understanding the needs of your local community, and that they're happy with it. So putting out posters, using social media where you can. Some groups are really good at this, and they do it really well. Newsletters as well. People love reading newsletters and information on site. It's really good. And of course, communicating back to the council and making sure we know how well you're doing, and it's very positive. And I think having groups involved in doing these things on site, I think it it raises the profile of these sites and makes them almost more secure and more protected from potential funder cuts, and we're able to lobby much more strongly for. I mean, we've talked about funding and budgets being cut, and it enables us to lobby much more strongly, because we could say, yes, these people were involved in these sites and they were doing this thing, and these were the benefits. And one of the things that we're doing in Bristol is that we're recording volunteer hours, so we can actually, essentially put a value on how much volunteering, other than the obvious value to the improvements on site, say that this is really important because it brings in this amount of support to the sites, and often that's what funders want to see as well. So yeah, I think that's kind of our process in a nutshell, really, and then just repeating that over and over again until those site improvements are kind of where you want them to be. Because there's always, I think that nobody will disagree with that, there's always something else to do on a site to make it better. So I think we've got to the end of that, unless there's anything you want to add to that, Jeremy.
No, I think that's about it. In essence, the process is very straightforward. Understand what changes you think you need, talk to the council about it, and then work together to help it happen. So yeah, I think that's kind of a good enough kind of run through of it. I guess the question now is what questions have popped up in the chat. I think Charlie can help us out there. I think she was watching that and going to pass them our way.
I was indeed. Can you hear me? There I am. Excellent.
Yes.
So yeah, we have a few questions for you, which is great. So starting from the top, Caroline has made a question and a comment, I suppose, but it'd be good to get your reflections. Increased footfall over lockdown has been pretty dreadful for nature. So it's about learning what we can do to try to allow sites to regenerate. Tricky to balance that with the principles of allowing open access to all. What would you say about that?
Yes, absolutely. So it's one thing that we're trying to quantify at the moment in terms of what works we need to do to restore different bits of sites. We are already looking, you may have seen at the Downs, for example, one of the groups have been working on putting in, not a group, people working in a socially distanced, COVID safe way, of course, have been putting in some dead hedges to stop people going across some of the more vulnerable meadows. We've also put some fencing in at Ashton Court to stop people walking along the meadows where the skylarks have started nesting. And there's lots and lots of work. I know people are very disappointed at the state of some of our areas that we just haven't managed to get to and put in mitigation for. So Stoke Park is one example, which has just been really, really busy, unbelievably busy since it came as part of Bristol's portfolio. And the gateways there, very muddy and very difficult to navigate. So that is something we are looking at, but it's, because the ground conditions are still wet, we're not able to do stuff immediately. But yeah, it's been an unprecedented amount of use in our parks, and also clearly the amount of litter in the parks and the amount of litter we've collected has increased such a lot, and we haven't been able to have, your support as volunteers to go out and do this clearing up, and basically working on a skeleton staffing as well, because we've been impacted at that side from COVID and we haven't been able to take seasonals on. So yes, it has made a difference, but on the other hand, there's so many people out there that have experienced parks that they would have never been to before, and that's got to be positive as well, because there's more of a lobby out there from people who see the benefits of parks and understand more about how good they are for mental and physical health. Is there anything you want to add to that, Jeremy?
Well, the only thing, that's nice and thorough, so that's great, Caroline. But the only thing I would, I'd add into that is that these things often kind of go in ebbs and flows and peaks and troughs. And this year has obviously created this huge peak of usage that we're not so used to. And that's created issues with it, and now, we're doing what we can to look at that and see how we can work with that better. But like you say, Caroline, it's also created a peak of interest from people. So hopefully that's future support for the parks and a future weight of kind of demand that then, you know, brings more from the council resource and possibly from other places, the Parks Foundation, for instance, to help then find solutions for this and improvements in the future. So I think, you know, we've got to recognise that a lot of these things always go in these kind of peaks and troughs and flows, and that it's never going to be a lovely linear improvement. Life, unfortunately, isn't quite as smooth as that. So that was all I'd kind of add to that, is kind of, yeah, actually sometimes you've got to hit a bit of the worst to get the pressure to then make it better.
Absolutely, thank you. Just to say, anyone in Baines, Ian Critchley from Friends of Henrietta Park in Bath, is happy to help others. I know, happy to help others with the systems that Jeremy and people at Baines have set up, if anyone has any advice or needs any advice. And let's have a look. Any other questions? Probably one for Caroline. Joe Cork would like to know, what's the best way to get benches in a Bristol City Council park? It's quite a niche one, so it might be worth getting in touch offline, but I imagine it's pretty much the same process as starting off any project in a park.
Yeah, our main method of communication is by the web form on the website, or if you have direct communication with us, we've now got Parks Operational Coordinator who, so there's 3 of them, one for the south, one for the north, and one for the east and central, and they're your key contacts as friends of groups. So I would start there. And so the one for the north is Mary O'Connell. She just started in November. The one for east and central is Taya Jiski. And the one for south is Steve Clamping. So those are your key contacts as friends groups. So I would always start with them, and then it may get past somebody else. But yeah, we are looking at a wider project in terms of bench sponsorship, but haven't quite yet got that bottomed out, but that is something I think we're working on, just to try and make it as slick as the trees would.
Brilliant. And what would be, Jeremy, who would be so it's area coordinators for Bristol that Caroline has just listed. Who's the point of contact for Baines?
Well, for bench sponsorships, coincidentally, it happens to be me anyway, so that works very conveniently.
And for other projects?
If it's more about general requests for the site, it would be through our Baines main contact. We've got a report it system and a general inquiry system, our Council Connect. So it would be coming through there, it gets redirected to the parks, and it would hit the site managers that deal with the relevant site. So that would be our routes. Brilliant.
And I think as we all know, councils are under pressure at the moment in terms of resource, and the more fully formed project ideas can kind of be with consideration for all of the elements that we've heard about today, the easier it's going to be for the council to then get their heads around whether they can support those and how exactly they'll fit into park maintenance and management moving forward. So hopefully there's been a really good overview today of everything you need to know, from having the consideration of what is already in your park and how you can help improve that, right through to some of the detailed practicalities of what it takes to maintain any enhancements or new features that go in. So yeah, the more well informed you can be, the easier the relationship and that ongoing project will be moving forward. Brilliant. Well, I think that's it questions wise. Jeremy and Caroline, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I think it's just to reiterate what you were just saying, just make it really easy for us. So it's difficult for us to say no, I think. But yeah, we, you know, if there are problems, do come back to us. It's generally, you know, we're generally not out there to get things wrong deliberately. We are busy trying to juggle lots of things. So do come back to us and talk to us and meet us out on site. As Clary was pointing out earlier, that's usually the best. Those personal relationships are the best to build up with kind of me and my team.
Brilliant. thank you both so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Excellent. So you are free
You're
to
welcome.
go.
Thank you very much.
So we've got just a few kind of wrap up
Thank you.
bits
You're welcome.
from me now. And I'm going to try and share my screen without losing control of everything. Bear with me for 2 seconds. So yes, I really just want to wrap up to say thank you to people, to highlight where there might be useful kind of information and topics